This meeting is being recorded.
Hello. Hey, I mean, we'll just wait to see if who else joins.
Sure. Hi.
Hello.
You expecting a lot of people tonight, or not sure?
Never know. I never know. Sometimes I've had a couple of times and it's just been like me and like one or two other people, and sometimes it's like 20 to 30 people. So
Yeah, right. Weird.
change every time. What do you currently do?
I'm studying conservation ecosystem management at RMIT in Melbourne,
Oh yeah, nice.
and yeah, looking for some part-time work in the field.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
a
that
bit of
the is that sorry?
I
Is
was
that
gonna say, a bit of a career change. So
yeah.
yeah.
Nice. Nice. What were you doing before?
I did an arts degree, was studying linguistics, then realized that all the career paths from that were basically just academia all the way
Yeah.
along. And that's not a career choice my brain wants to do forever.
Yeah.
Looking for something that's got a bit more kind of a bit of the nerd stuff and a bit of the hands-on getting out there in the world and yeah,
I'd
touching.
say yeah, you're definitely in the right area now. Total nerds and pretty hands-on stuff, which is nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Work outside. I used to work in finance, and yeah,
Mm,
it's like the drastic change is it feels amazing. Um,
yeah, for sure.
I studied the. Are you studying the Cert 3 in the conservation and ecosystem
It's a
management?
diploma.
Oh, I just finished the diploma.
Oh, really? Yeah, whereabouts did you do it?
I did it online with TAFE New South Wales Online.
Okay, and how was that?
It was pretty good. I find sometimes online can be difficult
Mm,
with TAFE because they don't do live classes like this. It was
it's just
just
all self-paced.
yeah,
Far out.
which was a bit tough because like you really want to be able to ask questions.
Yeah,
And so I think the great thing about TAFE is how hands-on it is. So
yeah.
that's what I really like. And it was, but in saying that, it was still very practical because they made me go out and test rocks and test my soil and
Okay.
go to different sites.
And you weren't using equipment or anything? Did they provide equipment?
No, I bought my own equipment.
Okay,
I had to
yeah.
buy my own equipment. But that's okay. Like it
Because
is
we've,
what it
we've been using like I'm only starting second semester now, but even the first semester we were using, like clinometers and whatever else to measure trees, and then like water testing kits for
is. Oh
all the
damn.
chemical stuff. But I guess
We didn't
it's
do any of
just
that. Oh, well,
yeah.
we did the water testing. We used the chemicals and I did the water testing, but I did not
Okay.
do the are you talking about the water test in trees, the stress test?
Oh no, that was different things.
Oh, right.
Um, like measuring tree height diameter, but then also as a different project.
Right. I
And then
see. Okay, okay.
the
I
chem
got you.
testing. Yeah, but still, I guess yeah, if you're getting all your own equipment, then
Yeah, like I could definitely this is partially why I do this community because it's like there's kind of flaws in the way they do things. But
yeah.
in saying that, I did really enjoy that course.
Mm.
Interesting that you've gone for the diploma though, because that's quite a like management way of going at it. Like whilst the Cert 3 is more of the hands-on nitty-gritty.
Yeah, and I don't think I knew that when I was going in. Like, it's kind of hard to find a map to the field and sort of, um, here's what you should do if you want to go here, and here's what you should do if you want to go there. It's not that clear. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I know, because like initially I did a Cert 4 in another environment subject, but it
Mhm.
wasn't at all. But like it was this, but it was like office sustainability. So that wasn't really what I was looking
All right, it was
for.
what's sustainability?
Office sustainability,
Oh, I
so
see. Yeah. Yeah.
water use and waste, recycling and
Uh-huh. Yeah.
implementation. So yeah, I it's not very clear which one's right for which student, but like I
Mm.
came from university, so I was like, well, I feel like like I understand I can do study, I know how to do the academic stuff, like I'll be okay with the diploma, but actually in actuality it's kind of reverse for TAFE. You kind of need to the practical stuff is the lower stuff, whilst the the more technical report writing is the higher stuff.
Yeah. I found it a good balance on that front so far in terms of like I didn't need to know to learn how to write a report and stuff, and that stuff's been a bit boring for me but other students do need to know how to do it. But there has been plenty of the practical stuff.
Yeah, that report writing subject was an interesting one for me as well. I just tried to smash through it, hey.
Yeah. But I mean the main issue is that they've overfilled the classes and understaffed it. But I think that's just higher ed at the moment. Or TAFE as well. Just tertiary.
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just gonna get ready. Hello, Thalasini. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly.
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you. How do I pronounce your name?
It's Thalasini.
Thalasini. Okay, I was not too far. Where is your name from?
I'm from Greece.
Greece. Okay, I remember now. Yeah.
Yeah, it means the girls that comes from the sea.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, if at any point you're having troubles like understanding me, just you can put a message in the chat or you can just straight up interrupt me. And that goes for everyone. Like the way I like to present is very much like just interrupt me. There is no bad feelings because if you have a question, we'll just answer your question straight away. I'm happy if you want to leave it to the end, but yeah, feel free to interrupt me. It's difficult with Zoom to always know when, but just jump in.
All right, thank you very much.
No worries. And hello, Ilui. I'm sorry, I'm terrible with pronunciation.
Oh, sorry. My name is just L. That's my surname.
Okay, I thought so, but I was like, yeah, I don't know. L. Hello, L.
Yeah, hello.
Okay, I think this is probably it for tonight. I think we're already recording. Obviously Hunter didn't make it, and David didn't make it. That's okay. All right. Let me share my screen. Does anyone have with them a flower or some sort of picture of a flower that they can look at? Now's a great time to go through your phone, favorite a few flower photos, and then we can use them as examples if you put them in the chat, as examples to talk about and kind of help us to identify plants using flowers. And I guess it's a good segment into what tonight's class is about. We're going to look at how flowers can help us to identify plants. We're going to speak specifically about flower structures. We're going to look at a few examples of some flower structures. Then we're going to look at dioecious, hermaphrodites, and monoecious flowers. We're going to look at flower colors, and we're going to look a little bit into flower shapes and inflorescence. So that is a bit of a basic introduction into what we're going to talk about tonight. Again, any questions, interrupt at any time, guys. Also, I just want to very excitedly share with you my new book. I don't know if you can see it very well. It's Plant Glossary by Kew Gardens in the UK. Oh my God. Mind blown. It's just got like diagrams. I'll show you a good page. And I highly recommend it if you're really interested in the subject because I've been wanting it for a long time. It goes through a lot of things. So I can't remember, Elle, if you were there for our last class where we did like leaf arrangements and stuff. But for example, it goes through like all the different leaf arrangements that you can find in plants. It goes through every different flower arrangement. It goes through different textures, and the descriptive words and the differences it means. So when you are trying to identify a plant and you're looking on PlantNet, for example, it might use a word like hirsute, or it might say pubescent, or it might say hairy. Those terms all mean like has hairs, but different quantities of hairs. So understanding these terms can help us to identify plants. So yeah. Cool. Here we go. Can everyone see my screen all right? Alicini, I'm just going to mute you if you don't mind. Okay, perfect. All right. So we're going to start with a general diagram of a flower shape. So flowers are quite complex, and there's no one set diagram that can be applied across to every single flower. But generally speaking, the diagram that we use as a base for understanding the concepts and the original language for flowers are presented here on the screen. So what everyone probably know is what a petal is. It's those nice big broad, I guess, petals are actually leaves that have been modified to become protective flowers. How cool. But yeah, these large, colorful, usually leaves that have been modified into petals to surround the flower and protect it as it's opening up. So then we also have sepals. And sepals are, this might be a bit photo, can sometimes also be covering the leaf and be like a second set of petals. But they're generally lower hanging, further away from the reproductive parts of the flower, which would be the pistil and the stamen or stamen. And so sepals are like a secondary protective cover to flowers. You can also find that then you have brackets and other elements. And sepals can sometimes look quite leafy, like look generally like leaves, or sometimes they can be just joined to be part of a tube of a flower, or sometimes they are literally like another set of petals, so they've got overlaying petals. Cool. Let me just check. Okay, I got a few. Yes, I'm totally happy to share a copy of the slides afterwards. And yeah, if you have some photos of some flowers, throw them in the chat and I'll try and use them as a good example so we all know what we're talking about. But yeah, so then the petals and the sepals are the two elements. They can be sometimes referred to as a collective as tepals or tepals, which is a collective term for both of them, or can be a third set of, so you got tepals, sepals, and maybe the petals really around the flower. Then a collective term for all the petals of a flower is the corolla. So in this diagram down here, they have very quite generically put the tag line to be on this one that there's a petal and a corolla, but the corolla is 1, 2, and 3. That's the corolla. It's the whole of these, all the petals together is a corolla. Then the next term that we see quite frequently in plant identification is the calyx, which is typically referring to all of the sepals. And they protect, as I've said before, these are a protective layer for the flower. So if you look at, what's an example of this? Let me see if I can pull up an image of a hibiscus. If you think about what a hibiscus looks like, which I can appreciate not everyone might not know. Alrighty. So we have here quite showy and quite obvious petals, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see if I can find one that's just opening up. So maybe this would be a decent example. So here we have the petals, the colorful petals, right? We have the main reproductive parts, which we'll talk about in a second. Then we have this green toothed-like bit here, and that's what we'd call the sepal. So before the flower comes out all pretty and beautiful, it's hidden beneath and protected inside the sepal. And then right here, these bits that stick out, these are another protective layer around the sepal, which would be, in this case, a tepal. I hope that explanation helped. Sorry, I've just lost the chat. I'm still getting used to Zoom, so I apologize in advance as I slightly stumble. There we go. Okay, I see some photos. Beautiful. Let's have a quick look. So we got, perfect. L. Sorry, I can keep going to say Eli. L. That is a great example. That second image is an extraordinary, beautiful flower. Oh my God. And actually has an interesting thing which you see with roses where it has many layers of what I would call in this case tepals, because it's both petals and sepals or sepals. That's a really interesting one. And then your third one is, yeah. Okay, so you've got the 6 petals on that, which would make it, and that would be the corolla as a whole term. Cool. So the next thing we're going to talk about are the reproductive parts of a plant. So the female parts are called the pistil, and they are made up of 3 elements, which is the ovary, which we very, very rarely see the ovary on the surface level. You have to dissect a flower usually to look at the ovary. And in plant identification, it's generally not something you will see early on as you're narrowing down what plant you're identifying. However, it is something that you will see like as you get to try and identify at the subspecies level, that they may say, well, it has an ovary with blah 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 blah, and so that is when this is something that you dissect, or a taxonomist dissects later on. So we've got the ovary. Just switch slides. Then we have the style, which in this case is this one here, the long tubular bit almost that connects the ovary. Let me see if I can pull up that example from before. It connects the ovary to the head of it. So in this example, this right here is the style. And then we have the stigma, which is the pollen catching piece at the top. So the female part catches the pollen as it gets brushed off by pollinators, or it gets self-pollinated by wind, or whatever the mechanism is. And that's the 3 parts of the pistil. Then we have the male parts, which is a stamen or a stamen. And that is made up of 2 main parts. The filament, which is the same concept as a style. It is the tubular piece that brings it from the base. And then we have the anther, which is the pollen-covered male part of a flower. And that is often, like on this image here, each of these little yellow dots is a anther, and they're all individually like stamens or stamens. So there are many stamens on this hibiscus, for example. But interestingly, if you can see in the middle there, there are the 5 little red bits. Maybe I can find a better photo. And that is the female part in the middle. So the flower gets pollinated by a bee coming in, flying in, going for the nectar that's probably sitting down here. The pollinator bumps against the pollen all over the stamens, and then flies on out, right? Or the nectar that's attracting the pollinator might be hidden underneath the female parts to attract them to fly in and kind of like push past, and by chance rub pollen all over the female part to produce a fruit. Does that, are we all, could you possibly make it bigger on the screen? I possibly could. Are you talking about the, yes, the example of the hibiscus?
I love
Well, that's not exactly what I was looking for. I hope that's better. Okay. So we have the, cool. We have the style here, this tube. This is an interesting one though, because you could be easily confused to think that because the style is connected to the female part, right? It's not, because this tube carries both the female part up and the male parts. But the important difference here is that I know it's the female part because it's connected to the ovary. And the ovary must be down here, right? So then we have each of these little yellow bits at the tips are anthers with filaments connecting them. Do you have a question, Amy? And then we have the female part here that presents as the stigma. I hope that helped with your question. So we'll go through some examples, some more examples in a second. And then the next thing that I think is worth knowing about when we're talking about plant identification is the pedicel or peduncle when you're talking about pedicel that branches out to many flower heads. And the pedicel is simply what connects the flower to the branch. So let me find an example. Right, this is a perfect example. Well, except for the fact it's tiny. Okay. Okay, well, we'll use one of my examples then. So, on this image, the pedicel is what is connecting from the branch to the flower, right? And then, sorry, I was just reading Amy's message. And in this case, we only have one pedicel because it's not branching to many flowers. I will try pull up an example of peduncles or a peduncle later, but the gist is it's the part that connects the branch to the flower. It's that little piece there. In leaves, it is referred to as a, I'm not sure if anyone knows this, and maybe I'll leave it out to the group if someone wants to say it. Nice. Petiole. Yep. So yeah, the concept's practically, it's the same as a petiole, but with flowers we use the word pedicel. So in this example, this is an Australian native, and here you can see a few key features of it. Let's zoom in. So on each of these flowers, you might be able to make out the reproductive parts of the plant. So if you want to have a guess, feel free to have a guess in the chat now. Some people like to guess and then get corrected. Some people like to be told the answer. I'm happy to do whatever works for best for everyone, but the opportunity is now. And so each of these flowers, the darker outside bits are the stamens. And if you could look, maybe I can get you even closer. You can see, I hope that you can see that there's a little bit of pollen on them, right? And then on the inside, we have the stigma and the style creating the pistil. So with the anther and the stamen, and then the pistil and the stigma. And this is quite common that a lot of plants will have the stamens on the outside and the pistil in the middle. And then when we're talking about the flower structures and the petals, corolla, sepals, and calyx, then in this example, the sepals are quite difficult to tell on this flower. You could say quite comfortably maybe that the petals are these end pieces. You can see there, like they look like joined. They've been slightly joined or slightly cut out. And that's the petals of each flower there. The sepal in this case has actually been joined to make this tube here. And this is why flowers are quite complex, because in this case, the sepals have been joined, and you might think that these pieces here would be the sepals, but they're actually, in this case, tepals, and then underneath you can see the various ones, and these are brackets. And brackets are pretty much something that before a flower bud is even, growing on the axil of a branch, there's little stipules or brackets that are protecting that little growth bud that is about to come out. So they kind of prepare the plant to shoot out something that direction. And in this case, another thing to notice here for the plant identification that is actually a key to the species and identifying it versus another species is noticing where, for example, the pistil comes out. So you can see in some instances, it comes out right to the edge and actually past the edge. So past the petals, it's sticking out further than the petals. And that's a key identification feature of this species, that the pistil is longer than the petals at times. And that's where, for example, in Apochris, this genus, it makes a difference to understand how to identify the flowers. The next example is of a Phebalium whitei. This is another Australian native. And here we have some pretty interesting things to notice about this plant and how you would use flowers to identify this plant. Is there anything that, except for obviously the color, that's standing out that you think is noteworthy that might separate this species out from another one to do with the flowers? Okay, so the first thing for me that points out is, yes, the anthers are very large. They're quite long as well. That is quite a noticeable feature. The first thing that I saw and I see is the buds. And the buds is this protective coating, which we would probably call, well, we will call the sepals or sepals. So before the flower is opened, it's protected by this, and it's called a bud. So the unopened bud is orange and almost warty, similar to the rest of the plant. Now that is pretty interesting and different. It's not often that you see buds that are so warty like that. And then, yeah, you look at the next thing, and it's how big these anthers are. And now you can see another great identification key that's worth noting. It is how many stamens there are, especially with species like Hybertia, which is an Australian native species, but there would be many other species across the planet where you get a certain amount of stamens can differentiate between one grouping of species and another grouping of species, or a subgrouping. So in this case, we do a count. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, and that's one example. So in an ideal world, when you have time, you would look and check to count multiple flowers to get an accurate or an idea of how many it has. Obviously, this is ideally when it is flowering fresh, And I think in this situation, you can see there's a few of them, or hopefully you can see there's a few of them that don't have any anthers on them anymore, and they might have fallen off, or they might not be capable of reproducing those specific flowers. And then we have the ovary down here, this orangey bit. It would be underneath there, and we have the pistil coming out here, and the head of the pistil is very small on this flower. And it's interesting because the nectar that's attracting the pollinators is likely at the rim down here to get the pollinator to fly all the way in, bump all over the stamens, get the nectar, and then on its way out, maybe hit the pistil, but ideally go to another flower and hit the pistil on the way in. So that's some flower structure stuff. If anyone has any questions, please feel free. But obviously, flowers are not that simple. And we have many variations of what flower shapes can look like. So whether it's an orchid like this one, where we don't exactly have pistils, we don't really have stamens, or whether it's an Asteraceae, a plant from the daisy family, where there is like radiate and non-radiate, where we have disc florets and ray florets. So it's organized a bit differently again. Or we have the eucalyptus, which has lots of stamens and then this big filament in the middle. Or acacia, where you can see all the stamens on the outside, and it would be very difficult in this case to see the individual pistils. But I hope that gives you an idea that whilst this diagram gives a concept of a lot of the terms, or some of the most important terms, I should say, it doesn't have the depth to describe every flower shape. And so, in the case of a wattle, an acacia, there isn't really sepals and there isn't really petals. There is actually petals, but they're really close in and they're not a key anymore. Same with ukes, they have a completely different way of describing them. So ukes have an operculum, and this then can split off, and that's when the flower buds come out. And there's a way of describing this, whether it has a scar or not, and there's a whole bunch of factors as well there. But again, I just want to give you a brief introduction to this stuff, and then it is up to you to go further and to look into, when you're doing plant identification with plants and you have a flower, it's important to recognize some of these common features we've discussed, take photos of them, and then when you go home, you open your book to recognize, like, right, well, it referenced this, so this might be of importance here. So the next thing I want to talk about is whether all plants have male and female parts, which would make them a hermaphrodite. And then there are also some plants that have just one of the two. So they are specifically a separate male plant, or they have a separate female plant, or whether they have both of them, but on separate flowering bodies, if that makes sense. So for example, in a monoecious, we have a flower that is a male flower, and then we have a flower that is a female flower. So it only has the pistil and the female parts, whilst the male one has only got the male parts. That is just a different way of doing things. A lot of pine trees have quite an interesting system with cones. You'll see them, like when you go up to a pine and it's got all the orangey bits on it. You can give it a tap and you'll see all the pollen, or, well, it's not pollen for pines, but you'll see all the dust fly into the air. And that is to go land on a female piece that will collect that. And so they're on separate plants. And in this case, they are dioecious, having separate plants for separate genders. Hope that makes sense, and I haven't butchered my explanation. The next one is talking about flower colors and the commonness of flower colors. So you'll find that blue flowers are beautiful, but are much less common. And when you're looking at a plant, obviously the flower color is a huge giveaway as to narrowing it down. But you can have peas like this one here, this Fabaceae, that may be completely yellow in this image, but in another image have some orange markings on them. So it's important to notice the flower colors. It's important to notice the patterns on flowers. For example, in this Boronia, the tips are darker purple, whilst the inside is a lighter purple. And on the outside, or the sepals in this case, they have a much darker dark. I wouldn't call it purple, but it's like mauve. Yeah. No, I'm terrible.
Kill him.
What is it? I'm going to tell you now. A violet. I'm going to call it a violet. Now, another common thing that separates one flower shape from another, one flower from another, is the shape of the flower. And the the 7 common ones that I wanted to go through is campanulate. So this is, as you can just see, is described bell-shaped. They're often hanging down, and you look at them, they look like a cup or they look like a bell. And then we have tubular flowers, which is flowers that have a long tube that then open up with the petals on the outside. We have stellate, where flowers look more like a star. And then we have funnel form, which is similar to stellate, but they're joined by a funnel that comes out from the base and spreads. Following this, we have the pea flower shape, which is papilionate. You know what? I'm just going to double check that because my pronunciation is shocking. I always get terrified of because I taught myself a lot of these concepts. My pronunciation might be very different to that of a botanist. So I want to give you guys.
Check this out.
No, that's right. Papilionate, I'm pretty confident is correct. And that is this P shape here. P shapes come in a lot of variety in a lot of different ways, but generally speaking, they have this big banner at the back. And then they have 2 smaller pieces here. 2 little keels. Then we have radiate, which is very common in the daisy or Asteraceae family. And then we also have staminate, which I've included here because it's what we have with eucalypts, what we have with melaleucas or callistemons. It is pretty much when they don't have any petals. Yeah. The pronunciation's a real fun one because I might pronounce it one way and then I'll have a conversation with someone and they pronounce it so differently to me that we will literally take 2 minutes to understand that we were talking about the exact same thing here. Hey, Elle, I think your messages are getting blocked for some reason. They're saying the message is encrypted and cannot be displayed here. Just letting you know that I haven't actually been able to see your last few messages. Okay. Oh. Well, I don't know why it's not letting me see them. Huh. Damn. Yeah, no, I can't see anything. Sorry, Elle. I'm not sure why it's not showing them with me. I must have some strange privacy setting on. Well, it's just me, guys. All right. But if uh, I'm sorry, I really don't know how to fix that, Elle. If someone wouldn't mind sharing with me, like copying and pasting her message, that would be really, if it's a question, I'd be like totally happy. But yeah, I can't see it right now. Sorry, Elle. There's no style, it seems. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. No style, it seems, in these flower shapes. Yeah, that's a really good question. So, yeah, in this flower shape, for example, you can just about see it in this image here. Let's see if I can zoom in. It's not very sharp though. But underneath these two keels that are covering, there is actually little stamens and styles under there. So if you're ever like in Australia and you see, well, actually peas are all around the world, you'll see that the bee will go in and try and like push through and underneath these two here. And that's probably why this one's like damaged now, because that's where it's hiding. And this one, the style is right in the middle. Yeah, I hope that answered your question. This is about an earlier pick. Fair enough. If it's this one here, I'll quickly go through this one too. So thank you everyone. The large anther. Oh, right, yeah. So the style was, thank you everyone. The style was this one hanging out down the bottom here. It's a tiny little stigma at the end, and the style's there, and that makes up the pistil. Bit of a wonky one, this guy. Okay, so now we'll jump into inflorescence, which is what I was talking about with this and getting excited about with this before. So flowers are arranged in many different ways. So the arrangement of flowers is called the inflorescence. And I'm totally fine with whatever you guys want to do. And then in this example, the arrangement of flowers is once again different to maybe this example or this example. So they're all arranged slightly differently, and how they're arranged is a really important way of identifying different species. So obviously we have solitary, which is when a flower sits on its own stalk by itself. It is not arranged off of one main branching stem or stalk or pedicel, and then branching off into separate flowers. Then we have raceme, which is when I wish I could see your messages. Let me see if I can show you an example of this stuff. Yeah.
Oh no, I was just saying that I would rather like if I'm not getting recorded, I can turn on my camera. I'm not asking a question, don't worry.
Oh, no worries. I'm happy to stop the recording if you'd prefer that. It just goes to the group in the Symbiosis Society, but I totally understand that.
It's okay, honestly, because I got my mic.
Okay, all right. I think I'm not still recording now, but I'll record it for the rest of the people that might want to watch this later on.
Yeah, no, don't worry, I got it.
Is it still going? I can't tell. It's still going actually.
It's still recording, but you're not screen sharing at the moment.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, hopefully that's working now. So this is an example of a raceming, which is this flower shape here. It's when the flowers are arranged off the stalk, each with their own pedestal. Nope. Nope. So you can see how like they've come up the stalk and they've each got their own pedestal coming off the stalk. That's a raceme example. Then we have spike. It's the same as a raceme, except there is no stalk or there is no individual, pedestal on each flower. So they're directly on the main flowering stem. Then we have corimb, which is where all the flowers are held at the same level at the top of the flower. And so the pedestals vary in length to make them the same height at the top. When you next
Maybe like carrot family flowers, maybe like that. Or
Perfect.
coriander.
Yep, another great example. Yeah, those are great corimb examples. So yeah, you can see that the pedestals are all different lengths. And then we have umbel. Did I miss one? No, umbel, which is when all the pedestals arrive from one single point, and they often are at the same height. However, with umbels, sometimes you can find that they're not all at the same height. There can be a little bit of variation, but generally speaking, this is kind of the form you'll see. Pedestals from one place instead of pedestals from different lengths of different lengths.
If I had chat, I would send a photo, but I saw an Oya carnosa that has like that, the umbel shape, but it's upside down. And it's really beautiful, but I'll send a photo later in like the community chat or something.
Yeah, cool. That would be cool. Yeah. Also, your photos from earlier one were really awesome. That second one.
Thank you.
Lotus flower. Yeah, that's awesome. I realized I don't think I'd ever seen a lotus flower until that.
Yeah, it's more common in Asia, I think, because I'm in East Asia. So if I like see a lotus, I try to take a photo of it because they're really beautiful at this time of year.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and you can actually see on the lotus, like coming out from the sides is all the stamens. So I'm not quite familiar with the lotus arrangement, but so I'm not sure what that piece in the middle is, but I'm gonna go ahead and guess that it's probably the female parts, though I'm not sure. I'm really
Yeah,
not
it's the ovaries and the seeds become
Yeah.
like edible. You can eat the seeds, you can eat the actual ovary as well.
That's sick. Yeah, cool. So that's the ovaries there. That's a really cool example. And then we have capitulum, which is an example which you often see in the daisy family. This one here. So they come all like many little flowers on a level head of a kind of holding bracket shape. So in this case, like the holding bracket would be these ray florets. And then we have the disc florets on the inside, which is, in this example, the capitulum. And then we have panicles.
Hello. Hello.
What's going on?
I want to know how to identify the ray and disc floret in the Asteraceae family.
What's that?
I want to know how to identify the ray and disc floret in the Asteraceae family.
Yeah, man.
It's
Let's
a
go
bit
through it.
confusing.
I'm gonna find you some great examples. Oh, perfect. I found one straight away, bro. Oh, but it's a tiny image. So I don't know if you guys can see this image quite clearly or not, but in short, the ray florets are what you would typically call the petals on a daisy or an Asteraceae. And then the disc florets are the actual flowering bodies. So in this example, the ray florets are these very short pieces on the outside. There are multiple layers of them. And then the disc florets, well, actually in this, that's a bad example. I'm sorry, that's a bad example. Because this daisy in particular, this coronidium, has brackets and actually doesn't have ray florets. So let me pull up a photo with one that does have ray florets. And so what we call this, when they don't have ray florets and they just have the disc florets, when they just have the disc, the actual flower parts and not the ray florets, we call it a non-radiate flower head. Whilst when it has both the disc and ray florets, it is called a radiate flower head. I'm going to look for some good Asteraceae examples for you.
So would you mind going into what what actually is the definition of floret?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I'm sure of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry if I've skipped a few things, but I'm really grateful you guys asked.
No, I get there's so much vocabulary. So
No, that's cool.
be
All right, so
I think.
I have another question.
yeah, man.
I have another question. That you said that disc floret are the reproductive part in the Asteraceae family, disc floret. And if we look the disc floret, we can identify the male and female reproductive part in the disc floret too. The structure of the male and female are well defined in this disc floret.
So let me, I don't know if I can zoom enough on this one. I'll pull up the definition of a floret first. So a floret really is just another word for a flower. So this is off of PlantNet New South Wales. So it really just describes a small flower. So in this case, if you look at, let's see how close. I'm not sure if I might have to pull the original image up. But you might be able to see now the tiny little flowers that individually make up each disc floret. So the disc floret is, that's a good question. The disc floret is the entire thing, whilst the individual flowers of the disc floret. Let's double check that. Is this one of the spikelet or a dense color? No, right. So I'm wrong. Sorry. So each of these is a disc floret. I hope you can see that.
Yeah, you can sort of see some of them, the ones that you were just circling there, they look like in isolation they could be a flower on their own.
Yeah. So when you next get a chance to see anything from the daisy family, you'll be able to look at it and say like, right, well, does it have, let me try to find another better photo for you guys.
And so the ray florets, I think what was confusing me because I was thinking they're just petals, but there's an entire sort of mini flower structure on the edge that has one large petal-like structure. And
Yeah,
each has one, and they kind of form a border.
No, so interestingly, with the ray florets, they don't have flower parts. So I'll pull up the definition for a ray floret as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So the ray florets are almost like, act like petals almost.
Okay. But we can't call them petals because they belong to a cluster of florets rather than a single flower.
They are part of, yeah, so I mean, that's a really tough definition to understand. But hello. The ray floret is, I'm just give me 1 second, guys. Sorry, I'm
All
being
good.
hectic. I need to pull up a good image of a daisy that I can really show you guys then what we're talking about.
Yeah, and actually, I know I've got open calendulas out the back. I'm just going to go and get one for myself to look at.
That's a great idea. This is on the screen here is some examples of disc florets. So you can see the individual petals on the disc floret, which would just be, is just another word for a small flower, a specific word for the Asteraceae family generally, and grasses, to describe the small flowers that they have. And you can see in the middle there, to answer Sachin's question, this is the stamen with the pollen on the tip. And in some of them, like this one here, or on this one here, you can see it looks a bit different. So this one's like one big connected body. And on this one here, it's like split. So that is the female part. Did that answer your questions, Sachin?
Yes, my questions are. I understand what you say.
Okay.
Uh, so Asteraceae flower is just like that. Like there is there is one inflorescence, and we have compressed all that flower into a one structure. So uh, you understand that there is some influences type, and we have compressed it and it make it come into a one structure, and that form into ray and disc floret.
I'm not sure I understand. Sorry, Sachin. In the daisy family, the way that we describe flowers is different to how we describe it for almost any other grouping. So they describe them more similar to the grasses get a similar description. And individually here on this image, this is again another Asteraceae. And you can see these are again the disc florets, and you can see the individual petals on the disc floret. So when you break it down to the small flower, the disc floret is the description for the small flower, and the small flower has the common descriptive words that we used earlier on in the class. Well, okay, I'm going to look for another example. I'm looking for one with disc florets still.
Parthenium, you have seen the Parthenium species.
Say again.
You have seen the Parthenium species. They have a good structure of disc floret. Parthenium.
Parthian. Yeah, I could probably just think of one. I was just looking for one that's my own image because it's going to be nice and big. And then I can give you a really good example. There we go. Okay. So, well, it's not super clear, but here we have another Asteraceae. And each of these, well, these as a collective, the white parts, form the ray floret. So they are what appear to be like petals, but they are part of the flower structure of an Asteraceae. And then we have the individual disc florets here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least that I can see open on that one. 1, 2, you know. And then we have the stamen coming out, which is made up of the anther and the filament. And then in some examples, let's see if we can find them. Well, interestingly, for example, in this one, I'm not seeing almost any. Oh no, there they are. So these pieces here, these long tubular bits, are the female productive parts. So on the Olearia, the female productive parts present on this Olearia brevipeduncula. They present near the base of the disc florets. How I explained that in a way that everyone understands. I hope so. I'm sorry if I've created a heap of confusion. That was a really good question from everyone.
That makes sense. Thanks. Sorry for throwing you curly questions.
No, curly questions are great. I love learning as well. I hope it just wasn't finger curling listening to me trying to explain it. Okay, so if everyone's cool with that, the last thing I want to cover was the panicle, and this is quite common, and you get quite a few different variations of panicles in plants. I'm gonna try and present to you some of them now. Right. So we have here panicle down there, and we have the different variations of a panicle up here. But generally speaking, a panicle is when a flower head comes from lateral branches. So we have main branch, then lateral branch, which is then further branch. So main branch, branched again here, then lateral branch again here. So main stem, branching, lateral branch one, and then lateral branch again. Does that make sense? Oh, awesome photo, Amy. Okay, let me see if I can put this. I'll just do one final example. So we have on this flower here, we have the ray florets on the outside, and then we have the disc florets on the inside. These ones aren't open yet. And we can see that we have the individual petals opening up a little bit, and we have the big old chunky stamen in the middle there, and again there, and again there.
I think we have the photo on the screen.
Oh, damn. I thought it would be.
But we can see it in the chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, of course.
It's just that's not what your mouse is.
Thank you, Amy. I have it on the screen, so I assumed it would be up there as well. Okay, well, if you're looking at the flower, you have the big ray florets on the outside. Then if you zoom in quite a lot, you can see the closed disc florets and the individual disc florets with the open and the stamens. And then on the very edges, next to the bases of the ray florets, you can see the long female parts that are typical of the Asteraceae family. Okay. So let me pull up an example of a panicle for you as well. Yeah, and there's really no photos on Google. Does anyone have any examples of a panicle or examples of flowers that they want to ask about? This might be one. Nope.
Is lilac a raceme or a spike?
Is which one, sorry?
Lilac, Syringa vulgaris.
Lilacs. Are you asking if it's a what, sorry, or a what?
I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, a raceme or a spike.
A spike or a race me?
Raceme, thank you.
Right. Yeah. Cool. I'm looking at it now. So the key that you'd be looking for let's see if I can pull this image up. Does the individual flower, can you guys see the photo? I hope this is a good example. Does the individual flower have its own stem? So we can't really see on this photo too well. You get close a bunch of times, but it does look like from in there that each flower comes off not straight off the stem. So this is the main branching stem. If it was a spike, all of these flowers wouldn't have pedicels and they'd be directly on the stem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I got it. Thank
So
you.
in this case, it's erase me, yeah.
Would begonia be an example of a panicle flower?
Yep, let me have a look. I mean, I'm getting different kinds of photos of begonia.
Oh yeah, there's so many different kinds. I'm thinking of the bigger ones where they have multiple flowers on a. Let's see if I can find what actual.
I think I found a panicle flower. It's the Rothica genus. Rotheca.
Mangifera indica is a good example of panicle inflorescence. Mango.
It was Begonia grandis that I was looking at. Oh, the one on screen.
Yeah, I think I'll use this one on screen
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
This is a good example of a panicle. So we have main branch, then divert, and then, well, in fact, actually, yeah, main branch that branches here, diverts, and then lateral branch again, and that's where each flower is. Main branch, diversion, diversion. So it's like it comes off. I forget what the camera is. Main flowering branch, then you have lateral branch with more branches that then branch off that and the flowers here. 1, 2, and 3. That makes it a panicle. I'm going to look at some of these other examples that people suggested. I'm just looking at the Rothica. Hard to tell from some photos, isn't it? And this is why, like, when you take your Plan ID photos, guys, if you need to take one of the flower to maybe count the stamens, to maybe understand the arrangement. Is it a disc floret or is it a ray floret? Is it radiate, which would have disc and ray, or is it non-radiate, which just has the disc? So one of the flower, and then you want to take one of the actual arrangement of the flowers. So you get a great photo to go back to and be like, I definitely know that this is, matches up really well in your book, or when you look up PlantNet, matches up really well with the description of a panicle, matches up really well with the description of a corymb, That's the importance of taking good Plant ID photos. Okay, I've got a decent photo of Ruthiga. So this is a fun one, actually. This is a fun example. Let's see if I can get a decent. Yeah, cool. So we have a few things going on here. Can I zoom in, please? No. So we got the main branching flowering stem, right? And then from there, it diverges out, right? One lateral branch. And then it has individual pedicels. So this is the peduncle here. This is a great example of a peduncle where it holds multiple pedicels off of it. And then, yeah, so we have main branch, lateral branch, then flowers. Because these aren't another lateral branch, they're a pedicel each. So in this case, the Rothica is not actually a panicle. It's more likely to be a spike, which is a little bit confusing because it does laterally branch. So main stem, right, like the spike, and then it does have like a pedicel, but it's called a peduncle because it has multiple pedicels that come from that. Whilst in the example of the lilac, though I can't see this one properly. What did we have before? Begonia was a good example, wasn't it? we have like main branch, lateral, split, and then lateral split again, right there it splits, and then you have the pedicel. Same here, main branch, split again, pedicel. In some examples here, you can see actually it goes main branch, split, but then it goes straight to pedicels. So again, a little bit confusing, but because there is the consistency of some flowers having that split again, split again, and then you've got the individual peduncles, pedicels. Do we understand the two that I've gone for here, the two examples here?
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, great. Inflorescence is complicated and can be very confusing because then we have a lot more terms that come into it, like you might have seen in the book briefly then. So we get like balanced balanced panicles, or we have like a whole bunch of other terms to describe when panicles have different arrangements. But the important thing is to notice one of these shapes, and from there you can branch deeper into the more specifics. So does anyone else have any questions about this topic? Just looking to find some more examples for you guys. Oh, damn it. I wanted to open it up anyway. All right. So in this example here, we have this structure here, the green structure. I hope can you guys see my square that I'm drawing?
Yes.
Cool. And then we have the individual flowers, right? And then we have these little bits up here. So this is interesting because you actually have a bit of a combo deal. You can see that the leaves look quite similar and go all the way up to just beneath the flower base. But then, and like especially in this example here, they look very similar to the leaves. But they then actually have a separate piece here. So you can see this little triangle bit here is a bit skinnier, looks a bit different. Let's see if I can zoom in. Boom, boom, boom. So it's actually it's tough to see because it's all hairy, but it's got a bit of a stellate margin, like a hairy margin to it, whilst this one doesn't at all. So from that difference in shape and difference in margin, and also the outer one is like overlaid over the top of this like flattened inner one, outer one, inner one. So I would say that these are actually the brackets, which are leaves modified at the base to protect the flower. And then this is likely the sepal that originally was protecting the flower. And then we have the individual petals up here on these long tubes, right? So that would make this a tubular flower. And then we have the individual petals up here, and they're quite hairy, so that is something to notice about this species. And then maybe I have a better photo of the stamens. I do. And then at the top of the flower, we have the stamens, and this one you can see they're really covered in pollen. And on this one, in fact, you can't actually see the female productive part, right? You can't see it again there. But here, you can just about maybe see it in the middle there. but I don't want to say that that is it. There, bang. There's a good example. Let's see if I can find another one for you. That's one there again. So see how the female part doesn't have the anther, it doesn't have that big pollen presenting part. It's usually quite small because all it needs to do is catch the pollen as it gets knocked off the flower. That's another one there. And I think that's all the ones in this image. And then chances are, if I'm guessing that this plant was smart in its evolution, the nectar that attracts the bees is likely down here in this tube. So they got to really stick their heads in there or get in there. It's probably actually been evolved specifically for quite small pollinators that would come in. Maybe this guy right here is a little pollinator hanging out. And they come in, they go and get their nectar, and then as they fly out, they hit the female part. Hopefully they've come past some pollen in their tracks on the way there. But anyway, everybody, I hope that you have learned something new today. Idea plant from a photo. I always feel like I have to go back out. It is quite difficult to identify a plant from a single photo unless you're really a real expert and you know those grouping of plants quite well. Generally speaking, when I'm identifying a plant, I like to try and get as many features as possible. I think the leaves, I did a class on this last month. There's a recording of it in the community. I think the leaves are an important one about an important feature when identifying plants. So it's really good to take photos of those. And then it's really good to take photos of a flower, at least, and maybe the arrangement of the flowers. And fruits, for example, in gum trees, the capsules or the fruits of a gum tree are quite key in the identification of gums. The size, the way that the valves are, whether they're exerted or whether they're inverted, the shape. All of these things can differentiate different species from one another. But generally speaking, flowers are a really great way to differentiate different genuses or groupings of plants. For example, if you see a flower shape and it's a radiate, which has the radiuscs, right, or has the shape of a daisy flower, it is more than likely to be an Asteraceae or from the family of Asteraceae. So you have a great starting point in your identification. If you see a flower that has a pea shape, right, you know that it's likely from the pea family, which is the Fabaceae family. So these kind of things can help you differentiate different flowers. If you notice it doesn't have any petals on it, right, then you might be able to guess that it's from the Myrtaceae family, which is the eucalyptus family, and a bunch of other stuff. So that's where flowers can come into identification. Whether you can identify it from one single photo, if you sent a photo in right now and I tell you like, what is that plant? Probably not. But if you gave me photos of a few different features, I could go online and I'm pretty confident, very confident I could figure it out. So that's where I don't know all the plants, but I understand the concepts for doing plant identification. And for me, that's the important part. And I totally agree with Amy. There's a few fantastic documentaries by David Attenborough on plants. What is it? The Wonderful World of Plants. David Attenborough. There was a recent one he did. The Green Planet. The Green Planet by David Attenborough is a great watch. Super, super cool stuff. But obviously not as probably informative as, going through an ID book or listening to this class, I hope. It is really interesting, but it's more about like how plants evolved and compete in nature, which is really cool too. Secret Life of Plants is a really good one too. Big fan of that one. Anyway, if there's no more questions, I'm going to conclude the class there. Is everyone cool with that?
Yeah, that
Okay.
was amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for jumping in and with your questions. I am really happy that I have helped you guys tonight. And if you have any more, you know, throw them in the community. Someone will be able to help. If not, I'll be able to help. And yeah, thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Good
Thanks. Bye.
night.